Welcome! Coming to you live from Champion Studio in Charleston, South Carolina. It's better than ever live. Wherever you're watching and wherever you're listening, I hope you're making today your masterpiece. My name is Dr. David Geier, orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, and media medical expert. My goal is to help you feel and perform your best regardless of age, injury, or medical history. It is a beautiful, beautiful day here in Charleston. Low 70s and sunny is just amazing. If you've never been to Charleston, South Carolina, it is truly one of the more magical places, at least in the United States, maybe the world. And one of the things I really love about our fall is the weather. So I've said that like the last 5 or 6 shows. It's a beautiful day here. It really is. It's finally starting to cool off. Even though I will tell you, if you are not used to the weather here and you come from like all these people that move here from New York or Ohio or all these places, and then they come in the summer and complain about how hot and humid it is, my response would be, well, you didn't have to come here. You can certainly go back. But I promise you would like it here. I'm actually not from Charleston, even though I've now lived here for, 16 years. And it's the second time I've been here. I went to medical school here too. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. That's what I consider my hometown. I've lived there 3 times and love Memphis too. But if you ever get a chance to experience Charleston, definitely come this way. It is a wonderful place. But wherever you are, I hope you're having a wonderful day and hope the weather is great too. Remember, this entire show, everything I talk about here, all the health and wellness tips and information that I'm going to share with you, all these research studies, this is not medical advice. I am sharing information for educational purposes only. I am not giving you medical advice, so don't construe it as that. If you have specific medical concerns, talk to your doctor. All right, I'm going to tell you on the front end, we may go a little long today. I am super chatty. I'm going to go ahead and warn you about that right now. I on Thursdays, I've mentioned before, Thursday mornings, I'm in clinic Thursday afternoons, but Thursday mornings, I do TV interviews. I'm the medical expert for 2 TV stations here in Charleston, and I record segments for them and for some other stations that I work with. I did that earlier this morning, but got done in enough time to go to the gym much earlier than normal, so I was able to get my weightlifting in, had a fantastic workout, heavy weights, pushed the reps, really, really happy, and now I am jacked because of it. Not so much physically, I wish I was, but not so much, but you know, runners talk about runner's high and endorphins, and maybe I get some of that with some of my sprinting, but I get it from good, heavy weightlifting exercises, and I have got that today. So be prepared. I'm going to be chatty. We also have a lot of studies to get to, a lot of good stuff that I really want to talk about. Remember, if you have comments, if you have things you want to say, or if you just want to say hi, like Robert here is saying, definitely do that. I would love to hear from you. One of the things that we're going to talk about, we're going to leave the show with something that I care very much about. Overall, my big thing health-wise is living longer, but not just living longer for the sake of getting older and hitting 100 or 130 or beyond. It's feeling great and being able to do whatever you want to do as you get older. But with that is I want my brain to function well as I get older. I want to be able to make decisions easily and be quick responses and be able, good memory and not forget where things are and be able to navigate things and not get lost. All of that matters to me as I hit 70 and 80. I mean, I know that's a long way away, but I am preparing for that now. So I do all kinds of stuff. I have tried not every brain supplement, I'm sure there's tons more, but I've tried tons of them. I've tried L-theanine, which I liked. It sort of takes the jitteriness out of coffee. I've tried the racetams, didn't get anything out of that. I've adrafinil, which is the precursor for modafinil, better known in the trucking community as Provigil. It's for narcolepsy, but people take it to stay awake for very, very long periods of time. Not so much I see that much benefit from modafinil, other than I can maybe concentrate for longer periods of time. Let's see, Neuromaster from the Bulletproof folks, which is coffee-derived or coffee berry fruit, which creates brain-derived brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor. That one actually seems to work well for me, but I've tried Alpha Brain, I've tried CILTIP, neither of those did all that much. And then I do all sorts of brain training things, Peak and Elevate and Lumosity I've done for years. I do Duolingo to learn 2 different foreign languages, all trying to protect my brain. And so this first study matters a lot to me, or just generally anything that helps your brain. There's a study that just came out, Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience. They looked at the health of your brain and how your blood pressure plays a role in that. And this is a big deal. 100 million Americans in the US, 100 million American adults have high blood pressure. The percentage of people in the whole world that have high blood pressure has doubled in the last decade. So we're heading in the wrong direction there. And when we talk about high blood pressure, we're talking about anything above 120/80. But where you really want it is 110/70. Well, these researchers found that if you have high blood pressure, it's bad for your brain. Basically, your brain is physiologically older and less healthy, putting you at risk for not just dementia, but heart attack and strokes. But it wasn't just high blood pressure above 120/80. It was people within the normal range of blood pressure, but at the upper limits of normal. So we really, these authors feel like we really need to get it around 110/70. Well, then that gets to, all right, how do you lower your blood pressure? And yes, there's all sorts of medications, and that's not really what I would want to talk about, but it's worth talking to your doctor about how exercise can help your blood pressure, how changing things in your diet and lifestyle factors might play a role in high blood pressure. So that's something, if you want your brain to function well as you get older, keep an eye on your blood pressure. And the key, what they found too, is you got to really address this years before the brain changes start to come about. So this is not something you address when you're 60. This is something you address when you're in your 20s and 30s. One of the ways that people talk about dealing with high blood pressure, you've probably heard this off and on either from your doctor or just people talking about it, and that's the amount of salt in your diet. There's a huge amount of controversy in the nutrition world, in the medical world, about how bad salt actually is as far as high blood pressure goes. For some people with high blood pressure, sodium, which is the main component of salt, sodium chloride, is extremely detrimental, and they're really sensitive to salt. Others, maybe not so much. But this is something that we have to get a handle on. The upper limits of sodium intake, according to the American Heart Association, is 2,300 milligrams a day. The typical American diet is way over that, somewhere around 3,000 milligrams a day. And if you have high blood pressure, it should be around 1,500. Here's the key. Our bodies only need about 200 milligrams of sodium a day. Way less than what we take in our diets. So we've got to figure out how we can get our sodium consumption down. Well, there was a study done just recently in China, over 20,000 adults who were at high risk of stroke, and they put some of the people, the researchers put some of the people in that group on, all they did was switch from regular table salt to reduced sodium salt, and they had a significant reduction in their incidence of cardiovascular events, heart attacks and strokes, and deaths within the next 5 years. So when we're talking about things, I'm a big believer with anything health related. The way to get it adopted, the way to implement it, is to make it easy. That is a fairly easy solution. Now, it may not be enough, but as a way to get started at cutting your sodium intake, lowering your high blood pressure, maybe switching to low sodium salt would be a good way to do that. Another problem with salt, one you probably didn't know, and I will be completely honest, I didn't know it until this study came out. Researchers at UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham, figured out that salt may be involved in our sleep, in our circadian rhythm. So what they did is they took groups of mice, and I know not all animal studies, especially mice, if you did the same study in humans, you might not get the same result. But a lot of these studies aren't really possible to do in humans, for ethical reasons and everything else. But what they did, this is not bad, 2 groups of mice, one high sodium diet, one normal diet, controlled diet. They looked at the mice, their movement throughout the day and night, and they looked at their brain activity. What they were looking for specifically was in the brain, a part of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It's basically what keeps our body clock and our circadian rhythms. And what they found is the mice who had the high salt diet completely disrupted their normal sleep-wake patterns compared to the group that just ate a regular diet. What they found is, based on the brain activity, their neurons were just overly active when they should be sleeping, and that the salt must play some role in the suprachiasmatic nucleus and affecting your circadian rhythm. So, bottom line with that, again, we don't know if this would apply to humans, but if you struggle with sleep and you eat the typical American diet of processed foods that have tons and tons and tons of salt and sodium, you might try cutting some of that out and see if it helps your sleep. All right. One of the other things that helps your heart, we talked about the blood pressure, and if you get that down, that helps your heart. That's certainly a good thing. Study after study after study over the last decade or so has shown that coffee is good for your heart. Coffee has a lot of health benefits generally. Now, I'm not talking about 8-10 cups a day. I think there's an upper limit that's probably all that good for you. But coffee has a number of health effects. Well, researchers, and I don't know, they're European researchers, wanted to know if a specific type of coffee may be especially good. So this was in the journal Clinical Nutrition ESPN. And know if you have seen the Adam Sandler movie Blended, where he named his daughter Espen, ESPN. That is not this. Espen, Clinical Nutrition, ESPEN. I'm not sure what that stands for. Interesting study, though. They looked at over 1,000 adults between the ages of 39 and 67, and they found that 30% of them on a regular basis consumed instant coffee. And what they found is, one, the drinkers of instant coffee had lower blood pressure, so that may be another thing you think about with high blood pressure. But more importantly, they had better what's called carotid arterial compliance. Basically, their arteries, especially the arteries that lead up to the neck that can have issues in stroke, those arteries were more elastic, lowering the risk of cardiovascular disease. Now, I'll be perfectly honest, I am not a huge instant coffee guy. I think it's fine. It tastes a little funny to me, but I guess if that's all you have access to. I only drank it for about 3 months maybe. In college, I had a coffee maker in my room, and it was a 4-cup coffee maker, so it'd make like 64 ounces. I had this huge travel thing, and I'd take it to the library or to wherever I studied, to pull an all-nighter for organic chemistry. Go to med school, still have the coffee pot, but I realized pretty quickly I don't want to study in my apartment, so I go study in the library, and so I'd bring little instant packets of instant coffee and then just get hot water from the coffee place and make my instant coffee. And I didn't particularly like it, but I did it because I wanted to study in the library, until I realized a whole bunch of my medical school classmates were crazy. I mean, they were super intense, and they would freak you out before tests of all this stuff they were studying, most of which turned out to be a bunch of nonsense. So I very quickly learned, all right, I'm going to study in my apartment after all, gave up instant coffee. But if you drink it, might help your blood pressure and certainly might lower your risk of cardiovascular disease. I do wonder, though, is it just instant coffee? What would make that different than just any other type of coffee? So that would be my one question there. All right, I think it was the last show that we did on Tuesday. Maybe it was 2 shows ago on Thursday. I talked about oxidative stress, and this is a big problem in terms of inflammation and systemic issues. And when we talk about the brain especially, one of the things that has been shown to lead to Alzheimer's disease and that type of dementia, which is just awful, seems to be an imbalance of oxidative stress and our body's ability to detoxify it. When we are exposed to a poor diet or maybe not enough exercise or anything, maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's smoking, our bodies create free radicals and this oxidative stress that then our body tries to detoxify. But if that balance is out of whack and we have more oxidative stress than our body's ability to detoxify it, that has been shown in this new study in Alzheimer's and dementia diagnosis, assessment, and disease monitoring. That's been shown, this imbalance of oxidative stress to our ability to detoxify it, that can lead to Alzheimer's. And you can see that well before the changes in Alzheimer's occur. And so what they found is that increasing your consumption of antioxidants can rebalance that oxidative stress versus detox situation. The antioxidants can eliminate a lot of those free radicals and protect your brain from developing Alzheimer's. So they recommend foods like broccoli, spinach, carrots, and potatoes, all rich in antioxidants. Dark chocolate, love dark chocolate, that's good. Berries, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, all very good in antioxidants. So when you're talking about your brain, keep in mind ways to add more antioxidants, whether it's putting berries into a shake or eating broccoli and carrots and that kind of thing, all potentially very, very good for your brain. All right, there is a study looking at grains and specific types of grains when it comes to weight loss. Now, I know everybody out there, the current thing is, you got to stop eating bread if you're trying to lose weight. The carbs are bad, and that's a rabbit hole I'm not going to go down today. But if you're going to eat grains, is there a particular type that might be better for you? New study in clinical nutrition looked at people who ate just refined wheat versus people that ate whole grain rye products. And they found that basically, and these were adults and overweight adults between the ages of 30 and 70, they were randomly put either in the refined wheat or the whole grain rye group, and then followed them for 12 weeks. Both groups lost weight, but the group that ate whole grain rye products lost more weight, and they had more fat loss, up to about 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds over those 12 weeks. And the question, well, what's different? Well, with rye, and I'm not a huge fan of rye. I think it's fine, but I don't particularly like it that much, but I don't eat that much bread either. But it's high in fiber, which can help you be full, and hopefully you eat less because of that, even though in this study it didn't seem to affect their appetite that much. But rye is sort of an easy fix. So if you're going to, and it's not that expensive, so if you're going to eat bread anyway, that would be the best example. That might be something you switch in an effort to lose a little bit weight. There's that whole website and diet book and all, eat this, not that. And this is one of those simple switches that maybe you could make and try it out and see how that works for you. Another switch, maybe not so much for you, but for your kids, is the question of what type of milk that they should drink. I'm not going to get into the should kids drink milk at all, because I know that's pretty contentious, and the milk people will say you need vitamin D and calcium. The people that say they shouldn't be drinking milk say you can get that in all sorts of other ways. That's a whole other discussion. But if you're going to have your kids drink milk, should they drink low-fat milk, or does it matter? Can they drink whole milk? Well, a new study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition looked at that, and they found 49 healthy kids between the ages of 4 and 6 and put them in either the whole milk group or the low-fat milk group, and kept everything else the same and followed them for 3 months. They looked at body weight, they looked at obesity, they looked at high blood pressure or blood pressure levels, and all sorts of markers in the blood to see what effect whole milk or low-fat milk had on their health. And what they found out, didn't matter what milk they drank, whole fat or low fat, they ended up having the same amount of calories. The kids that drank the low fat milk ended up having the same number of calories, despite the fact that the milk was lower in calories, because they ended up just eating more of other foods or consuming other drinks. So it ended up being sort of a wash. But there appeared to be no real difference between the whole milk kids, the low fat milk kids, in terms of any metabolic blood markers, any cardiovascular health blood markers. Presumably good. And I don't have a dog in the fight on should you do one or the other. That's more of your decision. Maybe talk to your kid's pediatrician. I will say, I've said this before, with nutrition studies, I like to see if the authors have a conflict. Basically, if the study was funded by somebody, like you see a study that says, Oreos linked to running the 100-yard dash 30% faster, or 50% improvement in school from eating Oreos, and then you look in the conflict of interest and the study was funded, or they received a grant from whoever it is that makes Oreos. I'm making that up, by the way. But you do have to watch with that with any study, but especially that's true in nutrition. And maybe not with this study, but these authors have been funded by the Dairy Health and Nutrition Consortium. So maybe there's a little bit of bias. I'm not saying there is. It could be a very good group of scientists. I'm just saying it's something to think about. But it seems to suggest that assuming they don't change anything else, whole milk may not be that much worse than low-fat milk for kids generally. All right, one of the foods that I love, really, really love, I don't eat it that much because I don't make it at home, and I don't go to that many restaurants that serve this, but if I ever go to a steakhouse, I love mushrooms. I don't know why, I just do. I will eat a lot of them. For 3 years, I was on the board of directors of AOSSM, which is the American Academy, or American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine. It's the National Orthopedic Sports Medicine Society. And before the board meeting, you'd have a dinner the night before, and it was usually at some steakhouse. And we were at one in Chicago, Morton's or whatever the other big Chicago steakhouse is. I can't think of off the top of my head. But everybody's kind of going around, and at most steakhouses you have, people get sides, and it's for like a big group. So it'll be like broccoli for 6 people, or asparagus for 6 people, or mashed potatoes, or anything else. And I remember the waiter came, and I was like, on whatever my steak was, and then could I get some mushrooms? And then when he brought all the stuff, he laid them out in the middle, and then he kind of looked at me with the mushrooms, and I sort of just pointed next to me. I ate that entire, it was literally like this big of mushrooms easily for 6 people. I love mushrooms. Well, turns out they may be actually pretty good for you, and specifically as it comes to your mental health. Mushrooms are the food that has the highest levels of an essential amino acid called ergothioneine. Our bodies don't make ergothioneine, and they are very good at eliminating that oxidative stress that we talked about earlier as it pertains to Alzheimer's disease, but it also seems to be extremely good for lowering the symptoms of depression and improving things like anxiety, lowering the risk of bipolar, depression, schizophrenia. Very, very good for mental health. And that's just the mental side effects. Other benefits of mushrooms: lower risks of certain kinds of cancer, heart disease, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's disease. So I am a big fan of mushrooms. No cholesterol, no gluten, low in sodium depending on how you cook them, low in fat, good protein. I'm all for it, but may actually keep you happy. Lower risk of depression, so all good. All right, so I live outside of Charleston in a suburb called Mount Pleasant. And my neighborhood, on any given day, driving in or out of the neighborhood, I will see 3, 4, 5, 6 golf carts. And more than half of those golf carts, it's kids driving it, teenagers and preteens even driving these golf carts. And I know a lot of my older neighbors, people in this neighborhood, they'll get on that Nextdoor app and complain about it. And I don't want to be that guy. I'm not hey kids, get off my lawn. I'm really not that guy. But it does annoy me that kids drive golf carts because they probably don't even have a license. And I really don't like golf carts. It's fine in a neighborhood, but getting on the public roads, got a big issue with that. All right, there's a new study done by Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Ted Ganley, who's an orthopedic surgeon, and I've met him, real good guy. They looked at golf cart injuries across the country over the last decade, and they are going way up, now to about 6,500 golf cart injuries a year. It was about 5,500 at the beginning of the decade, so they're going up quickly. And these are just golf cart injuries to kids. About half of the injuries that occur nationwide, golf cart injuries, occur in kids 12 and under, and about half of those injuries involve the head or neck. A lot of them, not a big deal, but some can be. These are things that are easily preventable. And Ted Ganley in this, and I would agree, I'm not saying that parents shouldn't let their kids be on golf carts and maybe shouldn't even drive them. I feel like you got to follow whatever the laws are where you live. But you just have to be careful. And the younger the kids are, the more careful you have to be. Supervision, buckling them in if they're young, and they're just all to it. Golf carts, people think of them as like little... They're not even cars, they're not even vehicles because they don't go that fast. But I have two friends that have had surgery after getting thrown off a golf cart. One that broke her jaw and had to have surgery for that. One who broke her nose and had to have surgery for that. So golf carts are not little playthings, nothing fun like that. They are fun, but you got to be careful with the kids. So maybe may or may not be a health thing, but it's important. So if you live somewhere where golf carts are a big thing, just be careful. All right. One of the things that I would love to do at some point, I don't know how this is ever going to happen. I'm hoping Elon Musk makes this possible for you and me. I want to go into space someday. I think that would be amazing. Just a week, nothing big. I just want to see what weightlessness feels like. I want to see what the Earth looks like looking down at it. Yes, I know the Apple screensaver show. I get it. I just want to experience it for myself. What was that NSYNC guy years ago that was going to pay like $20 million to go up in the Russian rockets? Well, maybe he did that. I don't actually know. Well, there's a new study published in JAMA Neurology, the Journal of the American Medical Association, their neurological journal. Anyway, some scientists analyzed the brains of 5 of the Russian cosmonauts. They went up to the International Space Station and stayed about 5.5 months. They came back to Earth, and these researchers tested them for all of these biomarkers of brain damage, and they found that 3 of them, I'm not even going to say the names of them, they're too complicated, but 3 biomarkers that show that these proteins build up in the brain and are associated with brain damage were elevated, and they were elevated for a long time. So that staying in space for a long period of time, if you're going to be doing that, is potentially bad for your brain. We already know that if you're in space for a long period of time, atrophic muscles, your muscle mass decreases, your bone mass decreases, your vision gets worse, it alters the bacteria of your gut. So if you do go, maybe don't go for 4.5 months. It'll be really cool if we get to the point that we can go up in space. I feel like I'm hoping to live long enough that the average person can get up there. I think that'd be really great. And I'll take every peptide, every supplement, everything to try to prevent all those problems so that I can go up in space. All right, somebody literally earlier today, I was talking to a patient on the phone, and we were talking about exercise, or no, this was yesterday. I was talking about exercise, and he does all this stuff, but wants to get rid of some of the fat in his body. He's not an overweight guy, but he does probably have some around his midsection, the back of his arms. And so we were talking about what exercise change you can do to burn more fat. And the type of exercise that, there's a lot of debate about, is some exercise better to burn fat than others, and I'm not going to get into all that. But it does look like you can make one simple change in terms of the weather and the environment to your exercise that may play a big role, and that is to work out in cold weather or in cold environments. And I will tell you, so you can see a lot of these biographies are athletes and coaches. I'm just fascinated in that, as I've talked about before. And one of the athletes and his coach that I'm fascinated by is Michael Phelps and his coach Bob Bowman. But one of the books that I've read about Michael Phelps talks about how he ate 12,000 calories a day. And that just blows my mind. And I saw somebody online one time try to figure out how in the world is he actually burning 12,000 calories, because even with all the training he does, that shouldn't burn 12,000 calories. And so they did all this analysis, and they figured out that the only difference is that he's in cold water, and that's making his body burn more calories, which makes this interesting. A new study in Cell Reports Medicine found that exercising in a cold environment may actually help your body adapt to temperatures more quickly and burn more fat. They analyzed 8 young male swimmers who swam in cold water, and this was over a period of about 2 years. Basically, they were better at adapting to changes in body temperature. They were better at thermoregulation. They also had more brown fat. And if you're not familiar with brown fat, that's the fat. It's usually the back of your neck and your upper back. and you think fat is bad, but brown fat actually burns fat in the rest of your body. It's actually very good for you, not just for burning fat. It lowers your risk of coronary heart disease, congestive heart failure, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes. Brown fat is very good, and cold is one of the ways to stimulate that. But it doesn't have to be exercise. So if you want to go run, maybe you try to, when it is cold, maybe you don't put as many layers on and you expose yourself to cold a little bit longer. But there's other ways to do that. You can drop the thermostat in your house. Study a few years ago, if you just set your temperature at 66 degrees and stayed in that for 2 hours a day, that's going to burn more calories, increase your energy expenditure. If you can get it down to 62 degrees for a couple of hours, you're really going to see your brown fat increase. That's not going to be something you can do in your house. So, exercising outdoors, especially in cold weather, good. Another good way to increase your brown fat, burn more calories, along the lines of this, try cold showers. That's been shown in studies to increase the brown fat. And in theory, I don't know this part if it's true, but if you just direct the cold water to your upper neck and back, that may stimulate brown fat production. So cold weather, cold environments, whether it's a pool, running outside in the cold, whatever it is, actually might be very good for fat loss and weight loss. And so that's the weather. Speaking of places and ways to exercise, we know exercise has 1 trillion, it seems like, health benefits. We talk about it on this show all the time. But one thing it does, just sort of like it did for me not that long ago lifting weights, is it makes you happier. It improves your mood. Well, there's a new study in the journal SSM Population Health that looked at all of these studies. They put 50 studies and 14,000 patient records together to try to figure out what type of environment for exercise was the best. And they actually found that if you can exercise outdoors, that is going to be really, really good for your mental health. Much better mood, much better or lower anxiety symptoms. It doesn't have to be exercise. It can just be outside activities like working in the garden, things like that. But that exercise done outside was even more beneficial than working out indoors. Better in terms of feelings of depression, lower anger, lower tension, less confusion. So all good. But here is sort of the kicker to that. The group that did the best wasn't just the people that exercised outside. It was people that exercised outside together with other people. So you add the social support, you add maybe it's being cold, maybe it's the vitamin D from the sun, the fresh air, whatever it is, seems to be very, very good for your overall health. I am all for it. I don't get outside to exercise nearly enough. I did walk earlier this morning outside, which was fantastic, but I don't do it nearly enough. But this says that it can be very good for you. All right, what are we looking at? I didn't go as long as I thought, 35 minutes. If you have any comments, I would love to hear them. Again, remember, this is not specific medical advice. Remember, if you cannot attend this show live and you want to listen to it, see what we talk about, get yourself healthier, learn some ideas, things you might try, definitely subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast, Better Than Ever Live. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, whether you're exercising outdoors, getting some sun and some exercise and maybe cold weather, and you want to actually comment and watch this show live, definitely do that. YouTube.com/Dr. David Geier. You can do it on LinkedIn Live, or my Facebook page, Facebook.com/Dr. David Geier. I feel like I spent way more time telling stories there than talking about all this stuff, but very, very excited. Really, really grateful that you're here. Robert, I really appreciate it. He says, great info. Thanks. Really appreciate people liking these topics. Like I say, I love the idea of living longer and feeling better. Somebody asked me the other day, like, what is my goal? Am I trying to live to 130, 150? No. My goal, and this is what I want for you, is that as you get older, you can still run or lift weights or play with your kids or go up the stairs without pain. Just be vibrant, be pain-free. It was so sad. I went to a regular grocery store this weekend. Normally I go to a Trader Joe's, not an endorsement of Trader Joe's. It's just where I kind of go. It's where I find my organic fruits and vegetables. And But I had to go to this other grocery store because I was out of body wash of all things. Amazon, I usually order ahead of time, but I forgot, and I don't need the hate about Amazon. I know they've got issues. I recycle all the cardboard, so don't give me a hard time. But I had to go to this grocery store, and I was stunned. It was like 9:30 in the morning, and I was stunned by how many older people in their late 60s, I'm presuming 70s, 80s, were really unhealthy and sick on walkers, canes, really bad limps, really hunched over postures, going very slowly. And I'm not being critical. I'm saying that it's sad. And once you get to that part, it's really hard to backtrack that. Yes, we've got some ways, it looks like, to rebuild cartilage in knees that are really exciting. I'll talk about that some other time, stuff we do in our practice. But having said that, the key is preventing that, preventing brain degeneration, preventing obesity, preventing your joints breaking down, keeping your heart healthy, keeping your blood pressure down. That's why I care about all this. And I want all of this for you. I want you to be able to do anything you want to do physically, mentally, and otherwise, as long as you want to do it. And so that's why this stuff matters to me. And I'm thrilled that I presume that you find this interesting if you're watching. Next week, I think it's next week, and I apologize, I haven't set a date because my schedule keeps changing, but there is, in addition to the Tuesday, Thursday shows, I'm going to do an extra show answering questions, an Ask Dr. Geier session. I'm going to try to do that once a month. I know a lot of you have bone and joint injuries, pain, and you just don't know what it means, and I still love doing that. I'm still orthopedics, even though I do more health and wellness now. So I will do that. I think it's next week if I remember my calendar. Thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate it. And I will see you next Tuesday for another Better Than Ever Live. Take care.